Trump started the trade war with China thinking he could cripple their economy and bring jobs back to America. But what if it's all backfiring? In a bold move, China just dropped a bombshell that could shift the global balance. Could this be the twist no one saw coming? To understand how things have reached this point, we need to take a step back and look at the original goals of the trade war. Let's break it down. Trump started the trade war back in 2018 with a bold promise: bring American jobs back, shrink the trade deficit, and force China to play fair. The strategy? Tariffs. Billions of dollars worth. From steel to solar panels, the U.S. slapped heavy duties on Chinese imports, hoping to pressure Beijing into changing its trade practices. At the heart of it, Trump's administration wanted China to open its markets, respect intellectual property rights, and end policies that allegedly forced American companies to hand over tech secrets just to do business there. 2018 press. But 4 years later, most of those tariffs are still in place, and so are the problems. American consumers ended up paying more. Many industries faced rising input costs, and farmers in particular got hit hard by China's retaliatory tariffs on U.S. agricultural goods. Then came the Phase 1 agreement in January 2020. Trump touted it as a breakthrough. China promised to purchase an additional $200 billion in U.S. goods and services, especially agricultural products. In exchange, the U.S. would halt planned tariffs and slightly reduce some existing ones. The deal didn't touch China's state subsidies, industrial strategies, or its tight grip on domestic tech markets. Even the promised purchases fell short of expectations by the end of the agreement's term. Meanwhile, China continued making moves, boosting trade with Europe, strengthening ties with the global South, and investing in local tech to reduce reliance on the West. Today, the U.S. administration has kept most of Trump's tariffs intact, reviewing policies but avoiding major reversals. U.S. industries are still stuck between high import costs and limited market access in China, while Beijing continues to play the long game. Phase 1. While Trump's trade war may have seemed like a promising path to economic dominance, the real consequences are becoming clear. The Trump administration aimed to level the playing field, but the trade war ended up creating a new set of problems, this time on American soil. For U.S. manufacturers, the tariffs on Chinese goods haven't just been a temporary inconvenience, they've become a lingering burden. Many essential components, from machinery parts to electronics, are still subject to steep import duties. That's translated into higher production costs, tighter profit margins, and a growing sense of uncertainty. Some companies tried to move their supply chains out of China, hoping to dodge the tariffs altogether. But shifting production isn't easy or cheap. Countries like Vietnam and Mexico, often seen as alternatives, are now facing their own rising labor costs and supply constraints. The result? Many businesses are stuck paying more and delivering less. Farmers' struggles. For everyday Americans, retail prices for everything from smartphones to shoes have crept upward. And it's the middle class that ends up shouldering the bulk of it, facing higher prices without the cushion of rising wages. Trump famously pledged to make farmers great again, positioning them as both the victims and the heroes of his trade war strategy. But despite initial promises, the outcome has been far less triumphant. While China did agree to buy more American agricultural products under the Phase 1 deal, the actual numbers have consistently fallen short of targets. Soybean and pork exports, once key commodities, never fully recovered to pre-trade war levels. Meanwhile, China has smartly diversified its agricultural supply chain, forming stronger trade ties with countries like Brazil, Argentina, and Australia. That means even if relations warm up, U.S. farmers may not automatically regain their lost market share. To cushion the blow, Washington poured billions into subsidies for affected farmers. But these payouts are only a temporary fix. They don't address the deeper problem: long-term market access. American agriculture, once dominant in the Chinese market, is now fighting just to stay relevant. As the U.S. struggles under the weight of tariffs and escalating costs, China is far from passive in this conflict. While the U.S. economy has wrestled with rising costs and political backlash, China has shown surprising resilience. Even with tariffs hitting hundreds of billions in exports, the Chinese economy hasn't collapsed. It's slowed, yes, but it's still growing. Rather than retaliating blindly, China played it smart. It found new markets across Asia, Africa, and Europe, gradually reducing its dependency on the US. And here's the kicker. Instead of backing down, China used the pressure as fuel. It's rapidly advanced in high-tech industries like 5G, artificial intelligence, and electric vehicles, areas where it now competes directly with the West. As the US doubled down on economic pressure, China turned outward, with strategy, not retaliation. Through its sweeping Belt and Road Initiative, China has been quietly reshaping the global trade landscape. From ports in Pakistan to rail lines in Africa and highways stretching across Central Asia, this multi-trillion-dollar project is a power move. The BRI connects over 140 countries, building not only roads but long-term economic alliances. By funding major development projects, it's winning loyalty from nations the West often overlooks, securing both markets and political leverage in the process. And while American companies struggle with the fallout of the trade war, China is building a trade ecosystem of its own, one where the US has limited sway. One of Beijing's most calculated responses to the trade war has been strengthening ties with countries that were once considered close US allies. China won't kneel down. Take the European Union, for example. While transatlantic tensions grew under Trump, China stepped in with trade offers and investment deals, positioning itself as a more stable partner in areas like green energy and technology. Even as political differences remain, economic cooperation between China and Europe has quietly deepened. Then there's Brazil and other parts of Latin America. As American farmers lost access to the Chinese market, countries like Brazil filled the gap, especially in soybeans and beef. China became Brazil's top trading partner, pushing the US further back in a region it once dominated. And perhaps most striking of all, China's increasingly close relationship with Russia. In the wake of Western sanctions on Moscow, China ramped up trade with Russia, including energy imports and joint ventures in finance and technology. China and Russia in 2023. As China solidifies its global position with these new alliances, it also introduces bold moves like the visa-free policy, which shifts the global narrative. In a surprise move that few saw coming, China announced a new visa-free entry policy for citizens from 59 countries, including the United States. For years, China was seen as a bureaucratic nightmare for travelers, but now it's flipping the script, inviting the world in with open arms. No paperwork required for short stays in key regions. This strategic pivot signals that China is open for business. Entrepreneurs, investors, and corporate delegates can now enter the country far more easily, strengthening China's image as a global hub for commerce. This visa-free policy has real consequences. For American business people, it's now significantly easier to travel to China, attend expos, sign deals, or even explore partnerships on the ground without the red tape of visa procedures. The timing is also key. As the US adopts a more isolationist posture, China is making a calculated bet that openness will win influence, and it's already paying off. Global corporations see the value of ease and access, and China's tourism and service sectors are reaping the early rewards. China's visa-free policy is just one piece of the puzzle, but its wider implications continue to unfold. After Trump launched the trade war to put America first, the US now finds itself facing a complicated reality. Inflation continues to rattle the economy, supply chains are still strained, and even the once booming job market is showing signs of fatigue. Big-name companies like Apple and Tesla, once dominant forces in China, are feeling the heat. Tariffs and diplomatic tension have chipped away at profits and operational efficiency. Apple's reliance on Chinese manufacturing now looks more like a liability than a strategic advantage. Tesla, once celebrated for its massive Shanghai gigafactory, faces increasing competition from local EV brands eating into its market share. And nowhere is that shift more evident than in tech. While US leaders talk about decoupling from China, Beijing is sprinting ahead in fields that will define the next century. From 5G to artificial intelligence to electric vehicles, China is setting the pace. Huawei has become a symbol of defiance, still a major player in global telecom despite US sanctions. Xiaomi and DJI continue to dominate global markets in smartphones and drones. And while American companies are tangled in red tape and regulatory battles, Chinese firms are forging ahead with government-backed support and a hungry domestic market. The trade war, meant to curb China's rise may have done the opposite, pushed it to innovate faster, diversify smarter, and outmaneuver U.S. strategy on the global stage. As the U.S. faces mounting challenges, China's rise continues unabated. As the trade war drags on, one thing becomes clear. China isn't just battling the U.S. on the economic front, it's winning hearts and minds globally. China's approach to the trade war has evolved into something much more sophisticated. Through the Belt and Road Initiative and new partnerships across emerging markets, China is reshaping the global economic landscape, not just by trading goods, but by changing relationships. Was Trump's trade war ultimately a failure? When it started, the mission was clear: reduce the U.S. trade deficit, curb China's economic rise, and bring jobs back to American shores. But after escalating tariffs and diplomatic maneuvering, the results have been less than stellar. The trade deficit remains high, the tariffs have hurt U.S. businesses, and China is only becoming more entrenched in global markets. China's response to these pressures has been calculated. Policies like the visa-free bombshell and the massive Belt and Road Initiative are carving new pathways for economic collaboration, leaving the U.S. on the back foot. What seemed like a strategic victory for the U.S. could end up being a strategic misstep. The question remains, has the U.S. set itself up for a long-term loss in a battle it started, or is there still time to recover? Only time will tell if the U.S. can turn the tide or if China has already won the war. While we've looked at China's strategic advances, it's time to reflect on the bigger question: has the trade war ultimately backfired for the U.S.? As time goes on, it's becoming evident that the trade war has allowed China to turn the tables. With its carefully executed strategies, including the now famous visa-free policy, China is positioning itself as a global hub for both business and tourism. This makes it easier for countries to engage with China, while the U.S. risks becoming more isolated with increasingly restrictive policies. In contrast to the U.S.'s hardline tactics, China is becoming a more attractive partner for nations across the globe, and its growing influence is hard to ignore. As it strengthens its economy and soft power through initiatives, China's global dominance in key sectors continues to grow. The U.S., on the other hand, is left grappling with a trade strategy that may have only accelerated China's rise. The trade war, once thought to be a powerful maneuver to reshape the global economy, now looks more like a strategic misstep. With China poised to outpace the U.S. in key areas, it's time for a serious reassessment of the U.S. approach before the gap becomes too wide to close. Do you think the U.S. trade war with China is backfiring? What's your take on China's growing influence? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this insightful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates on global economic strategies and geopolitical affairs.